Darius here, back with a review of the strongest photobiomodulation device that is handheld and LED. So this is a non-laser, an alternative to laser therapy, high intensity laser therapy, like a class 4 laser. So you're going to spend a lot less money when you pursue a high intensity, medical grade diode of course, high intensity LED device like this, which is called the LZR Ultra Bright. I do sell this device. If you want a discount, by the way, on it, just send me an email. My email is below in the description box. So I feel bad because I've been selling this device and working with Dr. Randy, the developer, who also has developed lasers for many years. He's been in the photobiomodulation space, working with some of the most well-known researchers, actually, for the last 20 plus years, something like that. And for some reason, I can't find my video review on this, and I could have sworn I did one. So I've just been keeping this incredible secret to myself, I guess. A lot of people don't know about this device, which we'll get into here, as obviously LED panels and things have trended, LED beds, right, full body beds. And yet Dr. Randy doesn't really doesn't do any marketing. So like if you don't know, you don't know. And you just might stumble across me with like AI research this device possibly, or see my video or something like that. He does have some other like dealers out there, but still nobody's marketing it. But here, like literally, I think some people will see this video and say, oh my God, this is amazing. Like I didn't know LED handheld devices literally went this powerful. And that is it in a nutshell. I can tell you, working with him, he literally did spend, I think it was at least a solid 7 years, maybe. It was a while, that's all I remember. Fine-tuning and tweaking and researching and really getting this device in the background here. Let's take a look at actually the device so we can take a look at it, specs. But he worked very hard, really just carefully. He has a laser and engineering background, so he put a lot of time into what? Well, really just making sure, the goal was to be able to create the strongest handheld LED devices for red wavelength and near. That was the goal. Just takes time, it really does. Diode quality, just so much. Even the glass, like little plexiglass on top of it, making sure it doesn't get too hot, too cool, just getting it to function each and every time and deliver a precise dosage. There's a lot to play around with LEDs, and also LEDs have still been always improving over those years. So as some better things came out, then there was a lot of like updates and upgrades. Anyways, so what are the wavelengths? 810, that's a near infrared, and 660. Okay. And by the way, he did also play around with other nanometers. So if you're like, well, I know these are well researched, of course, but why still choose only those? Or why did you still end up with those? So again, over those years, did a lot of testing, and he wanted to create also a device. Let's see if we can get a photo of it. He wanted to create a device that basically was the most true photochemical response. What does that mean? Basically, I had found with a lot of testing that once you really start to go past 850 nanometer, more of that light energy of the near infrared converts to heat immediately. Okay, so again, more of that wattage really, or milliwatts, however you want to measure it, more of those joules of energy is coming through as thermal energy into the body, if that makes sense. What we're after is the pure photochemical response, non-thermal, which yes, eventually as you follow the chemical process, the signaling that happens, a percentage of that indirectly through different cell metabolism functions will produce a little bit of heat as a byproduct. But you don't want to be converting some of your output, your optical output here, to heat at the beginning. Why? Simple. He wanted to create a pure photochemical non-thermal device, because it's cheap and easy to go pursue a hyperthermic device, a device that's thermal, right, giving you thermal heat energy, right? You could get a cheap heating pad, for example, or maybe like one of those heat lamps, which is almost all, heat, as a perfect example, right? There's other types of things you could do. You could take a hot bath, whatever, you get the idea. So it's like, okay, we can find these things, we can make heat, it's easy. But really, we're in this for the photochemical response, right? So that's really the main reason he stuck with 810. And you'll see a lot of companies don't do 810. And so you always have to say, well, if I'm going to spend so much money, you know, do I want to produce heat? You see, does that make sense? Right? I would want all of it to be that awesome photochemical response. Like when you understand what that does at a cellular level, inside, outside, it's like, oh my God, yes, give me more of that. Okay, I want more of that. I want less heat, and I want more of that photochemical adaptation, the signaling. That's why I chose 810. So you played around with all the different wavelengths over those years. Now, especially if you're in the 900s up, that's just a lot of heat. It can be so much heat, actually, that you have to be careful, which is interesting in some research studies. They've shown if you have too much heat at like 940 or in the 900s, you can actually damage cells because it's too much heat, literally. Laser-focused heat is more of a thing with lasers, but high-intensity LEDs can do it too. And it's just a little, you can basically sometimes have a little bit more of like a flare-up on certain conditions. You just have to be more carefully controlled. It's complicated, basically. And he just wanted to create a device where it's just like, hey, anybody can buy this thing and just follow the basic protocols, and it has an auto timer, shuts off automatically after 30 seconds. And I know based on, after 60 seconds, this one has 30 seconds for the 20 watt. And I know that somebody is likely not going to injure themselves, and they're not going to over-treat a condition if they just kind of follow the basic protocols. So the other reason for picking the 660 is what I just explained. As you basically get, because this is not the only red wavelength range, but you know, as you're going up past that, it's kind of a similar thing. There is more red you can achieve, but you start to produce more heat, like a hotter red, long story short. So again, like 660 is pretty sweet spot. 630 is good too, you know. I think between 630 and 660, certainly splitting hairs, you know, don't be fooled. If you happen to come across something where like our laser has the best proven 630, and you're like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Come on. Like we have plenty of research now, photobiomodulation. 660, 630, they're both great. Is one going to help you more than the other? Not really. They're both pretty equivalent, okay? But I think for sure, when you start talking about near-infrared, things do get a little bit different in terms of outcomes based on what I just described. Because for sure, a lot more thermal starts to happen as you go to the mid and higher towards 900 and beyond 900. So I do think there's definitely some wisdom in keeping it quite low in the 800s for near-infrared in particular. Anyways, let's look at more at these specs because it's so impressive. And then we'll look at the pricing. So per second, this is how much you're getting. 1,500 milliwatts per LED. Okay. How many LEDs on this? I can't remember. But it basically adds up to, I could probably do some math, right? But I basically will add up to 20,000 milliwatts or 20 watts, however you want to convert that, okay? And again, the only difference between the two models is the intensity. So 750 milliwatts, okay, centimeter squared. And again, cumulatively, you'll get that 10,000 milliwatts over time. So it's a good dose, really, a really good dose for 30 seconds for this or 60 seconds for this. Per region. So it's kind of like, the really cool thing is they really did a lot of time. It wasn't just him, it was some other very well-known photobiomodulation kind of LED experts. And they really were kind of thinking about like, you know, if we don't want to overtreat, we don't want people to overtreat because that is a thing. That is actually totally a thing that can happen, especially depending on your condition, what's going on, part of the body, a lot of variables. Can we just create something that puts out a lot, but it will auto shut off and will kind of ensure that for most conditions, you won't overtreat. So yeah, if you use this thing, let's say the 20,000, you run it for 30 seconds in one region, you're done. You're done when it's one, you know, for that region. There's some rare exceptions, you know, but usually for that session, you're done with that localized area. Granted, because it is covering a lot of surface area, which is great, you know, at the same time, you can, if you move it nearby to another part of the body, you can for sure do another 30 seconds. It just depends on what condition we're talking about. But sometimes, yeah, for sure that's appropriate. You can move to another spot right nearby and then do more if that part of the body makes sense to treat because it's interconnected, right, with whatever the condition is. And that's certainly if you have other areas of the body that have different conditions going on, treat those areas for sure for 30 seconds or for 60 seconds. That's completely acceptable, makes sense. There are some good protocols on the website, and more can be made available upon request, depending on what you are trying to treat. And the other thing when we find with research is if you have this type of amount of energy and you treat multiple regions on the body, especially where there's like higher blood flow and things like that, and certain types of organs, you can actually for sure have a systemic beneficial effect. So again, this is right on top of the body, right? So think about the standalone LEDs people are standing in front of, where it's basically like impossible to calculate anything when it comes to photobiomodulation dosing protocols. So that's one problem with that. But two is you have no energy loss. So you have 98 to 99% energy loss sitting in front of LED panels at a distance. With this, you have like maybe 1%. I mean, some reflects off the skin, but you have this thing literally right on top of your body, so no light escapes. You're getting almost complete depth of penetration and absorption for those wavelengths and all that energy. So you better believe, absolutely, this has a systemic effect on the body. There's been studies out there with even low power devices treating in one area of the body and having a systemic effect. And that's because it's acting on hemoglobin and other types of cells in the plasma in your circulatory system, right? So if you're reaching that, you're affecting that. Eventually, if you're treating your foot and there's blood there, guess what? That blood is going to be in your brain and elsewhere. It's going to be in your thyroid. It's going to be all over the place within a very short period of time because the circulatory system moves quickly. So almost everything will give you a systemic effect. The question is, how much of a systemic effect do you need? Do you want? That all depends. And generally, though, if you want to, there's a lot of great benefits to your entire body you could achieve. And you can say, well, should I get this whole like full body thing? And it's like, well, again, if you have something this strong, just to be clear, it's great for those localized treatments, fantastic laser alternative. But 100%, if you treat multiple areas in the body, especially certain areas, you will have systemic benefits. If you've ever used a high-powered laser, 45 watts, 60 watts, and you treat yourself for like 10 minutes, you're pretty jazzed up, honestly. It's surprising how energized you get, especially cumulatively. It honestly blew me away, some of my improvement in exercise and inability to sleep because I had so much energy in my brain from using high-powered lasers just cumulatively for a few minutes. So 100% with enough power, you can have a full systemic effect. And all those beneficial compounds that get formed, they circulate everywhere. So just a cool thing to note, right? So let's click on the store here. It's actually a really great website, a lot of useful information on here. It's not a bunch of marketing gunk, so definitely worth reading the website. He tried to put in as much educational information, just to also try to clear up a lot of confusion around just like photobiomodulation and lasers and things like that. All right, so what do we price this stuff at? Super reasonable compared to lasers, that is for sure. So $2,995 for the 10,000 milliwatt model, and 20,000 milliwatts, it's $4,000. Again, you can contact me, send me an email, I can get you a little bit of a discount versus not getting a discount. Just find my email address below. But yeah, extremely reasonable. If you want to compare that to lasers and see what your value saving is you take a total price and you divide it over the amount of milliwatts, and that you can calculate your cost per milliwatt. Or over 10 watts or 20 watts, you can divide and get your cost per watt. I don't know, I clicked on that there and it took me to another page you can check out if you click on this. Anyways, so that's pretty easy to make that calculation. So if it's, what's the cost per watt for this one? That would be $299 per watt. Okay, this would be $399. Wait, no, actually be less than that. Be half that price. So you get a slightly, yeah, that's correct. Anyways, so my point was, I'm thinking too many things at once, is with lasers, it's always good to calculate your cost per watt, which is, again, what you can just do. You can divide it into milliwatts, and you can divide it into the total watts, get that cost per watt, because it allows, that's just one of many things to do your due diligence on, but you should never buy a laser that's where they're trying to sell you something that's over $1,000 a watt, and especially if it's a higher power one. The higher you go, it's less costly for the manufacturer, and they should pass those savings on. So it should be actually under 1,000 a watt for higher powered, and higher powered being like 30, 45, 60 watt. So if it is over that, I can just tell you without getting into a million examples chatting about this, they're just trying to charge you more money and make more of a margin. There's no justification for charging more than 1,000 a watt. There's nothing special, okay, about whatever the laser is. They will try to convince you, for sure. Every laser company will, if they're going to charge a lot more as far as having some fancy functions and things like that. And when you actually ask, hey, can you back up your claims? Where's your research on all those fancy functions and things like that, to justify that higher price versus the other brand? There's nothing. There's usually no research to justify it, the premium price that's over 1,000. But yeah, with this, that's incredible value. So like for a laser, that's really super low. You're never going to find a laser that's $299 per watt. Doesn't exist. I wish it existed, of course, because lasers are great. But and let's just divide this. I know some people are shaming me right now with my math skills, but I just wanted to prove to you transparently that it's $199 per watt for this 20 watt model over there. Again, you will never find, if you do find a laser that low, run from it. You'll have problems with that laser within your first year, guaranteed. So you will find cheaper lasers out there, but you follow up with those people, and I follow up with plenty of them. I've been in this for 15 years, selling lasers and all kinds of stuff, and they ultimately, inevitably, always regret their purchase when they get a cheaper laser. Do not do it. Do not do it, unless you like just repairing your laser all the time and having technical problems. And anyways, yeah, it's not worth it. If you want a high-powered laser, you're going to have to pay a premium price for it. Now, Dr. Randy does actually have the strongest class 3 lasers on the market. And if you're curious about that, I'll send you his website. And he actually has some really unique, actually, lasers that nobody else is doing. And so if you do want something that's maybe like in the 20,000 range, 20 up to 30, he actually has some that's actually considered reasonable. Some actually uniquely designed, highest potent power, cool, non-thermal class 3s that are very strong. So just let me know about that if you want to get into that. And when maybe that's appropriate and things like that. Now I have practitioners get lasers because they're makes a little bit more sense with practitioners. But I also have practitioners basically have a laser and sometimes have something like this as well. We can chat about that if you reach out to me if you're wondering why. That's all I have to want to say. I just kind of want to walk through the device and honestly just let people know it exists. And again, there is some really good information on there. So you will have some good quality, just non-biased quality information here if you're kind of new to photobiomodulation. And again, reach out if you have any other further questions about this device. If you're trying to look into the lowest cost full body exposure device with thousands of LEDs, there is a new product on the market. You'll see it in some of my other videos. Some people want to go for a full body systemic effect passively, and there is something really, really good out there right now. It's high intensity LEDs, 1,000 LEDs, and you don't have to break the bank going with like a whole body photobiomodulation bed. It's a tiny fraction of the cost. So if you have questions like, when should I go with something high-powered and localized like this? When should I go with something like full body? Just reach out to me, and that's exactly what I do. I advise practitioners and everyday people at home so they don't get screwed. Make sure to like and subscribe to my video.